Welcome to Fragment of a NetSlum. On today's video, we will be discussing and showing you how to set up your own area server, what caveats may or may not come with it, and a couple of the built-in features that you may be able to leverage to create your own custom dungeons. Okay, first place to start, as always, is the NetSlum website. In the download section, which you can get to this with this link here. You scroll down to the bottom, there's the area server. It is if you only need this if you wish to create an area server. If you do not want to create an area server, you can ignore this. You click download, and then you'll get a zip file. And when you extract the zip file, these are the contents of it. You have the area server itself, the data of the files that go with it. There is a README, and there's this INI file. Now, there are some requirements you will need to make. I'm sure that you have. First of all, you will need to know how to adjust your router's firewall to allow forwarding of port 20,000, or whatever port you set here. This INI file will allow you to change a few small things. Mostly, the only thing that you really need to worry about is this port, and in theory, only if you have an issue with your router would require, or you wish to run more than one on your area server on your computer at one time. I don't recommend that, but it is possible to do so. You will need to make sure that this port here is forwarded to the computer you are running this on. We will not be able to help you or show you how to do that in this video because everybody's router is different, everybody's setup is different. So you will have to do the research yourself, but if you run into any snags, you can always ask on the Discord, and there's some friendly people that will help and locate it for you as best they can. And in all honesty, the only file that you really need to touch outside of the server is this profile.ini, and that's only if you wish to change the port. There is a README file. Of course, all of these come with README files. But if I remember correctly, it is the original Japanese README file. So, yeah, if you can read Japanese, it might be an interesting thing to read. But basically, it's just telling you the system requirements, which in this day and age, everyone has system requirements way beyond what the server was designed for. All right, so now that we've got all those housekeeping in the way, let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and run the area server program. And for the first time you run it, it might take a tiny bit longer. And you will get a box, depending on your Windows, saying, "Hey, I don't understand what this is. Please, please don't run it unless you know what it is." If you click the more info and click run anyway, the exe is safe. We always check them before we upload them, as long as you get them from the NetSlum website. Click run anyway, and there we go. You can. There's a little splash screen animation that plays, but if you click on it, you can bypass it. All right, it looks familiar, doesn't it? Okay, there are four quote-unquote applications, because it's simulating a desktop, just like everything in .hack tends to do. Exit, of course, closes the program. Display will let you choose the resolution of this box. You can turn on VSync. But there's really no need to. But you can choose a resolution that best fits with you. Honestly, I would leave it at 800 by 600, unless you have a issue seeing it, like if you have a high-resolution screen, and even then, it's still going to be small. I would never use full screen as well, because there's really no point. But those options are available to you if you should desire to do so. I'm going to leave it as it is for this demonstration, and then we come to the meat and potatoes of this program: area server and map editor. Area server is what you use to run the server or share it with everybody else. Until you have one, you really can't do much here. So we're going to start with the map editor. The map editor is what lets you add keywords, create your own maps, and do pretty much most of the setup for your server. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and bring it up. These windows are movable, and the first time you launch it, Windows will ask you, are you sure? Because it will open up a port, and I'll explain what that does in a second. But it does open up a port when you open up this, and it's the same port that will work when you launch the game when you launch the server for the first time. So you can go ahead and leave it on private because you're going to be using a forwarding method. But you can, if you wish to, you can do the public. I do not recommend it for security reasons, but go ahead and say allow access, and you only have to do this once. All right, now that you've told Windows that you want allow firewall, we'll go ahead and start by creating a new area. All right, and this is important because while two out of the three of these things can be changed, the symbol cannot be changed. So make sure you decide. You think about a name and a symbol that works best for you. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to call it Test Land, and I'm just going to say question mark server. All right, and root town. You have the opportunity to use any of the root towns in IMOQ. I would say that I would always start with either Mac Anu or Dunloriag first if you're a brand new player, because as the towns get further along in the higher level towns, with towns that would have been in higher level servers, the items available are more expensive and usually not a fit when it comes to the healing items specifically, because the healing items they kind of only give you certain healing items, depending on the level of the server. So I would start with either Mac Anu or Dunloriag, but you are free to choose whichever you want. Keep in mind that Leofail is Netslum. It's not the fancy one that was in the cutscene, unfortunately. But Netslum is also pretty cool. For the purposes of this demonstration, Mac Anu. Alright. So, now you have the screen, and it looks kind of blank, and you don't know what to do next. You have some options available to you in the menus and the buttons down here. First thing I would do is I go to the settings, and I would set a login message, just to say, like for example that, just so that, because it's easy to forget, and it's always a good idea to greet somebody when they come to the server, or give your information and say, hey, this is my server, you have any problem, if there's any issues, you can let me know this way. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that. You can control the data drain success rate. Now, I've never really messed with this too much, but basically you can make it harder or easier for it to data drain in a party. I leave this alone, but feel free to experiment with it as you wish. We have we go back over here to File. This is where you can make yet a new area. You can save the changes. You can load an existing area, which we're going to go ahead and I'll just save this one. And you see, you get up to 100 slots. So you can create 100 different areas if you like. And you pick the slot by clicking on it, and you hit save. And now it's saved. And then we can go ahead and hit load. Because I want to... Whenever you have any... it'll always tell you this message, even if you've saved a lot of the time, because you've made small changes. So as you saw, I just saved. So just be aware of that, and don't let that... Just make sure you know you've saved before you decide to reload something. Or if you made a mistake and you needed to reload something, just be aware that this message will come up regardless. So I'm going to reload it. It's basically the same way as the same process as saving it. You click on the slot you want, you hit load. You have the opportunity to delete it from this screen as well. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but either the load or the save screen, you can delete. That's how you delete any And if you're not happy with the area, there's no dedicated delete, like a file menu option. And we'll load. And since it really didn't do anything, it's not really gonna change anything, but we're back to exactly where we were. All right, now the first place you should start when you're creating your area is the word editor. You have the opportunity to create A, B, and C words. You have up to 200 of them per area. So there should be plenty to make some creative names, creative words, and some very interesting combinations. You are given by default a set to start you off with, like a care package. Chronicling is a special keyword. It's part of the Zeit statue time set. So it's a time dungeon. It's just for speed running. You cannot delete. It will not let you delete this word. You can change the settings on it, but it will always produce a Zeit statue. So keep that in mind. These are set up basically how they are in IMOQ. The same words, same kind of settings. And it's a good idea when you're creating a server to leave these for a while. You can delete most of these. You can delete all but the chronicling one later, but it's always hard to get a first set going. So I recommend you keep them. You can change them as you wish. They are not set in stone. So what I'm gonna do, just to show you how things work, is I'm just gonna create a word from scratch. You have these controls down here to add, delete, add, update, and delete. Update works on when you're modifying one of these. Say we want that's a bad example. I'll come back to that. Why don't we do type? Why don't we change the type of this dungeon to fiery? If we don't hit update, it doesn't affect anything. But if we do that and say update, it'll say, are you sure you really want to do that? And you hit yes, and it's changed now. So if we go to obedient, it is now a sand type level. Okay, so let's go ahead and you can also delete a word. Why don't we just delete the word? It'll say, are you sure you want to delete the word? And then you say yes. And then it's gone. Now keep in mind, until you set save in the map editor over here, you can undo it. It'll go back to what you had last saved. So if you make a mistake and you're not able to fix it, that is, you always have an out as long as you've not saved it. So just keep that in the back pocket as you're working on this if you make a mistake. But also, in turn, if you made a bunch of words, you make one mistake, you'll lose any of the new words you've created, and you'll have to do them again. All right, so click the add button to add, and the word will be that slum. Why not? Okay. Priority. Word is going to be the actual word text. Priority is going to be at what priority will the effects of this word be applied. For example, you might have a word that's a priority of 500. If I set this to 600 and you run into the word that's 500 in B has the type of woods, and this one is the type of lava, the lava will win over the wood because the priority number is higher. It's a little hard to grasp. Just know that if you want a word to be stronger or take to be put ahead, its effects to be put ahead of other words, make sure you make this number higher. I go by a pretty simple system of extreme, more than, middle ground, lesser than. So I have maybe like 900 for the extreme, like 600 for a slightly more possibility, 500 middle ground, which most of my words that I make I try to keep it around 500. 350 is good for a lower one. And then if you leave it at priority 0, then it'll just it will pretty much be overwritten every time. Or you know, it's if you can make all of your if all the words are 0, then you'll have a then the server will decide itself what it wants to do based on its own configuration. So it creates a little bit more randomness. So you can just make them all 0 and just let the server kind of sort it out. That's another valid option. Type is your field type. Unspecified will basically it won't do any effect to it, and if all the words are unspecified, the server will choose one based upon the magic that makes the randomness of each dungeon. You have the choice of a lava field, fiery field. Now, I'm not going to go into the differences between the two. I'll let you play around with it and decide. But when you'll get as you play the game, you understand that there's differences between the even though the names in this aren't the best, there are some differences. Desert, woods, snow, and ice. Again, there's some differences. A lot of it is each one of these has a grunty food. So if you're looking for a specific grunty food, you'd like woods, for example, which we'll come back to a little later. Would give you the piney apple. The snow would give you the white. I believe this is the white cherry one, and this is the cordyceps. Rocky, plains, swamp, grass, and unique to Frägment, the machine field type. It is a light element field that is a futuristic. It's a mech style. It is a desert. It has like a deserty feel on the field. The dungeon type is how deep the dungeon goes. The lowest is you have minimum of 2 levels with 5 rooms each level. And it goes all the way up to 10 floors with 11 rooms. So that's your massive, long dungeons, and that's as far. And Frägment IMOQ had a few 15 level the famous 15 level dungeon. You cannot recreate that in this, but 10 is pretty sizable, especially if you're in a party, because it does take about a half hour to an hour to get through a dungeon, depending how many portals are in it. So you have options you have a lot of options, because you can go 9 levels, 8 levels, 7 levels, 6 levels. Each one has their own set of amount of rooms, so you can kind of find something that fits what you'd like. I always say that with I try to keep the amount of 10 level and maybe past 5 to a minimum, just because not everybody likes a really long dungeon, or they don't want to see a server that's nothing but you could be the first to do that, by all means. Weather is hard to work out sometimes, because it is this is dependent on the field, and if you try to go for a general, let's just take it off to unspecified. What it'll do is it'll say, I don't know what it is, and because there's some differences. But what you can do is, if you go to plains, temporarily change your type to plains, and you can kind of or any of the types. Plains is good. I think grass might be better. Let me see. Yeah, I think this is better. Usually there's this first one's always like daylight, noon. This one is twilight. There's a night. This would be nighttime. This is cloudy or foggy. This is rainy day, rainy night. This is thundering day, thundering night. And these would be snowy day, snowy night on the snowfields. The editor is not very good about telling you what they are. I would experiment with it, and there are charts available in Discord if you look back in the history. I might when I post this video, I might include the chart in the description below. That way it's a little easier for you to kind of figure that out. But even if, like, for example, let's go ahead and say, let's go ahead and make this a night thunder. You can go ahead and set this back to unspecified. It's going to say, I don't know what this is, but it is, if any field that can produce a nighttime thunder will have that weather effect. Terrain is very simple. Do you want a very flat one? You want one with some elevation changes, or you want it to be very steep? Unspecified, we'll let the server figure that out on its own. Building, do you want a lot of them? Do you want the average amount, or do you want many of them? It's very simple. The buildings are things like symbols, the objects in that usually have the grunty foods. So if you want something that's very generous, you want to say you want to put a lot of them out there. But if you want to make a clean, empty field, you want to say few. Portals, same thing. Do you want a lot of portals? Do you want a couple of portals, or just want the average amount? These act very much the same. Just it's up to how, like, if you want something more difficult, you can do many portals and few buildings, so there'll be less buffs available in the field, but there'll be a lot more portals, and there'll be a greater chance of having roaming enemies as well. So again, I suggest you play with all of these options when you're setting it up to get a feel for it. It's one of these things that once you get a feel for it, you kind of understand what you're dealing with and how to work with it. So we'll go ahead and create this word. So now we have this word, and you can see all the settings that I have created are over here, and everything but the actual word name itself can be changed afterward, as I showed before. Change what you want, hit update. For the purpose of demonstration, I'm not going to do a B or C word, but I will randomly pick some so I can show you what this result tab gives you. So results will tell you what the field will be when it generates and what enemies will be available. By choosing Netslum Snarling Mirror World will be a desert type field, the weather will be sunny, it'll be a fire element, it'll have a 3-4 dungeon with 7 rooms, approximately. The terrain will be a normal type, it'll only have a few buildings, but it will have many portals. When you're working on deciding a field to create a custom dungeon for, I recommend you try the words out in here first to get an idea of what you will be working with, because this is the canvas that this is the tools and the canvas you'll be using. So we have deadly moths, Verminoids, magical goblins. So we're talking level 5-ish, probably a little less than that, probably around level 3. And we can go ahead and we'll use this as for our next part. Go ahead and now that you have some words, let's go ahead and create a dungeon. You can go to this tool. Now keep in mind, I want to tell you a secret about this little interface. You have to physically click each of these boxes if you wish to use them. Otherwise, it'll ignore your mouse. So keep that in mind, and I'll show you where that can be, where it trips you up every time. So, new map. Now, these buttons, new area, which is these actually mostly mirror what's up here. New area, load area, save area, new map, word editor, which was the word area we use, and to leave. So basically close this little part of the server. So, but one we're going to talk about now is new map and Netslum. Well, and of course I already forgot what it was, so I'm just going to randomly pick something else. Yeah. So, alrighty. When you hit OK. Now you can see the actual map of that level, and once you've created a new map, it is now a custom map. So you can now make some changes to it. At the top, you have a full map view, and then there's some controls here for this. So you can actually zoom in and zoom out and move the box, and it'll tell you where it is. And so this is actually very useful when you're dealing with building fine, detailed changes. The map here, this is where you can actually manipulate things with positioning. Like, for example, take the dungeon and move it around. Now, the terrain limits where you can put some things. So you can't put the dungeon on a hill, unfortunately. But you can move it around anywhere that it'll let you. And you can do that with any of these objects. If you right-click it, you get a menu. But you have to click it first. You have to click this first. Like, for example, like I was saying, if you do this, you right-click all day long, nothing will happen. But if you click into it, you'll get it. But sometimes if you're not careful, it will actually affect the change. So I always recommend clicking this map bar first before working with it. So we can delete objects. When you run into portals, you can actually right-click those, and you can actually edit what enemies are in. Now this editor is only limited to what was available normally, so you can't just add random enemies outside of what originally was going to have. So no, you can't put a Dawn Wanderer in there. No, you can't put a Data Bug in there. It's unfortunate, but it's to keep as much of a balance as possible. The enemy list on the left is everything that's available on the field. The spawn list on the right is what's in the portal. So we can go ahead and you are limited to how much you can put in a portal. If you've played IMOQ enough, you can kind of gauge what there is. It's like 2 medium and 3 medium enemies, or 2 medium and 2 small enemies, or 1 large enemy, that kind of thing. Same thing applies. So we have nothing but small enemies available to us. So you can select here. Red, I didn't exactly go over it before, but I'll double cover it. Any text that's red is what's highlighted and is what's selected. So you go ahead and just fill it up. You can get up to 4 enemies in a portal. So we'll go ahead and do it for this portal. Keep in mind that you will run into the situation quite a bit where you have the same monster listed twice. It is just how the listing is. It's got a set of lists, and some of the lists kind of overlap. And when that happens, you might have the same monster twice available to you. But this could easily be this could be a different enemy. This could be a mad grass or something. Just depends on what level you settle on. So go ahead and you hit cancel. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense to hit cancel, but it's actually more of an OK button. So don't let that throw you off. So you can do that. You can also then, of course, move it anywhere. There are limitations about where you can put portals. You can't put them too close to each other on the field. You can, so you can't do the double portal thing or anything like that. But you can. There is enough room that you can do a large low area coverage, like this pretty much automatically did. The other thing you can do is, of course, the objects. This has you can right-click on those, and it'll let you delete them. There's not much you can do with the objects. You can Spring of Mist is a special object. You cannot delete this one. You cannot do anything other than move it around. So you can actually physically move it where you like it, but that's all you can do. I'm trying to think, is there any? Yeah, there's really nothing. There's really nothing special on this particular field. You can add if you have limits for your map. So it'll tell you what type it is, and it'll tell you how many maximum you can have. There are 12 portals, so I can't add a portal, but I can delete this portal, and now I can add a new one. Some fields when you build them out won't have maximum portals, but if you want to add them, you can go ahead and add them. There's several sets of objects. You get 3 kind of base object sets and 1 specific to the field type. These objects are stored in these tabs here. And just like I did with the portal, you want to add, say, this shell. You click on it. It'll it's a little confusing because you use a button, and then it generates a little sprite for you on your cursor, and you just place it where you like. And then you have the opportunity to continue to replace that object. So if you want to place a bunch of them, it gives you an option of, basically allowing you to you can kind of paint the area with it. But you unfortunately the drag and drop, the drag and paint does not work. You have to click it each time. These are again, more objects available. Usually, some of these objects have grunty foods, and some of these objects have symbols, and a lot of them are just decoration. And these are specific to the fact that it's a wood-type field. This field could have a different element, and then you'd have a different set of objects during that element. The dungeon, again, there's really nothing you can do. There is absolutely no right-click menu, just like with the Ring of Mist. But feel free to put it wherever you like it. Remember that the fields always loop around, so you might want to put it in the middle if there's room, and have everybody come to it. Where you spawn is it's semi-random. There's several places you can spawn in a map, but it's determined by how the map is rendered in the area server. So there's no really way to specify where the player is going to drop, unfortunately. Now, the field doesn't have as much flexibility as the dungeons do, which is our next topic. The dungeons you are allowed to basically make as many rooms as are available per floor. So you can have up to 15 rooms on each floor on this particular one. Always be aware of the limitations. Each floor can have only 11 portals. You can only have 46 gimmicks, which I'll get into in a minute, and you can only have 15 floors. You can only have one virus core deployed, and that's another thing we can. That's another one of the gimmicks available. It's a specialized gimmick, and this is where the zooming in really comes in handy, because there's a lot of fine tuning in and you can actually see what kind of objects are in each of these rooms from a distance. So every dungeon has to have a upstairs, downstairs, unless it's the last floor. In that case, instead of a downstairs, it has to have a god statue, which you can find right here. It's an object that will already be on the map, so you can't delete it. It'll be just like with the Spring of Mist or the dungeon on the field. It's there, so you're good. We have again, like I said before, you really want to click this before you start working with the objects in here. We'll start with the god statue since I have it here. The options available to all of the rooms are you can rotate the room, which then rotates it on its center axis. You can do the same thing by double-clicking on it. You can edit a scene message, which, when you enter a dungeon, if you have a room, if you have a scene message established, it will say this in the room. So if someone was to enter this god statue room, and this message was on there, the screen would dim and it will say this in the room. You can cancel out of it, which will do nothing. You can clear it. Hitting clear will clear it, and this includes if there's already a message. If you decide that you didn't want one, you can use clear to clear it out. And register is what sets it up. When you have a message, you have a little email icon, I guess. Will indicate that there's a message on there. So if you need to go back and say, I didn't really want a message there, clear, and then you have to register it again, and it's gone. So we're going to edit a gimmick. Now, gimmicks are considered anything inside of the room. That includes portals, treasure chests, breakable objects, eggs, virus crystals, symbols, bodies, whatever. They're all considered gimmicks. You can see them over here. We have the controls for the edit gimmick also have a similar full map and zoom in, so you can zoom in even more closely if you want to do something very controlled. With the God statue, the only thing you can really do is edit the main statue and choose what kind of object it's going to give you. Is it going to give it a weapon? Is it going to give it a helmet? Is it going to give an armor, body, gloves, or boots? By default, it decided that it was going to give boots, but most people like weapons, so I'm just going to set it to weapons and click register. Now, when someone goes to this God statue, the rare item will be of a weapon of some kind. You don't have control over what exactly is in the God statue. It is still a roll. The God statue has 2 tables. It has a normal table, which contains just non-rare items, basically non-rare equipment of some kind. It could be level 99 equipment if you're in a level 98 area. It could be anything back. But it also has a table for rare items, which are, it's a roll if you get it, and they are pretty much anything that has the rare moniker, or potentially. It's a mystery that we haven't completely solved yet. But you do have the option of randomly stumbling upon rare gear. The higher the level, the better chance, and the level dictates what's going to be in the chest as well. So a level 5 field is more than likely going to give you something around level 5. Not always. There's always exceptions to the rule, but think of that in your head as you're making these levels. I'm going to cancel out of that, and we're going to go ahead and on this we'll just use this 4th floor. I'll show you the kind of things you can do. When the map is highlighted, you can drag them around. Now, when it's blue like this, it means that there's a connection. This is like a continuity check. It means that everything is connected. If I was to move this out of the way, now this room isn't fully connected. This room isn't connected at all, and neither is this room. Same with this one. If I put it back, it's fully connected again. So you remember that you want every room to be blue. When you're creating these levels, it's a good check for you. So go ahead and if you like what you see here, you can go ahead and just rebuild from. You can move some stuff around. See, I don't want that. Okay, if I right click on it, I can delete this room. All right, now what do I want? We'll take this large room. I see, and as you can tell, it won't work. It will likely not work. We'll put it down because it runs into these bounding boxes. These also act as bounding boxes. So always keep in mind that you can't. The smaller rooms you can work around each other a little bit better, but you do have some limitations in space between each one. So before I continue, let's go over the palette here. You have 3 tabs: large rooms, medium rooms, which is what you normally see, and small rooms. There are up and down stairs on all of the types, so you can choose whichever up and down, just as long as you have it on there. Most of the time, you're going to run into mediums and smalls, and then the occasional long one. Just play with it. You'll figure out something. There are little pop-ups to tell you what each of these things are. Like this is a dead end. And then what I did there, and I'm going to put the same room back, is when you have one of these highlighted, if you right-click, it'll get you out of there. Because if you continue, you can just drop rooms. But when you're done, if you right-click, it'll take you out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these extra rooms. Okay, you can double-click to spin and rejoin it. Now it's happy again. If you have an incomplete dungeon, it will not let you actually host the server. It'll when you go to launch the server, it'll say you have an incomplete map, and so you make sure that you complete this, even if it's in progress. If you're having in progress, make sure that up and down. You make sure that up always goes to down, and last 4 goes to God statue, even if it's just one room, because you can have less than the maximum rooms in a dungeon. You can have two or 3 rooms if you want. It's up to you. So let's look at this room here, because it's got a couple of gimmicks in it. Again, just to reiterate, rotate, edit gimmick, delete, and scene message. So all of the rooms will have these options for the most part. The God statue room will not have the delete, of course, but edit gimmick, again, you have 2 portals. Now, these portals, since they're part of this object, you cannot do anything with them. They're just there. But you can disable some things, mostly treasure chests in these, and then you can replace it with something else. So let's deploy our virus core for this particular map. Now, since we did that, you notice it says deployed. Now we can no longer deploy that. So you can't have a room full of virus cores. You have the opportunity of doing golden eggs, and this is a bloody eggs. This is a flesh type dungeon, so you have bloody eggs available. Symbols are unique in that, just like in the field, you can go ahead and click on them or activate them, and it'll randomly give you a buff. You can have up to 2 of them in a room. Now this room has too many. It only has the room for 4 gimmicks, so I can't do another one unless I do this. So you can have 2 of these in a room. If these are always fun to. If you have a particularly challenging dungeon, it's always nice to put 1 or 2 of these right before your boss setup or whatnot. So go ahead and play around with that. The other objects available. And if you, again, right click and delete. There's a context menu is always right click, so you can add the little warriors, or the eggs, or crates, or barrels, or whatever. All of those what those do is when you break them, the area server will randomly give a consumable item from around the level that the area is. So healing potions, cooked bile. In this case, you'd get cooked bile as the stat boosting element. Potion, I guess. I don't think bile's potion, but you get the idea. You also have the opportunity, and I'm going to delete the symbol so I can do this. You have the opportunity of deploying chests out in the field, and including risky treasures. Now, when you right-click a treasure, you have the ability to edit this item. You are able to select from what is allowed. What each area has a set item level. It's dependent on the level of the area and a bunch of other factors that can add or remove to it randomly. But these are the items available in the dungeon on average for this particular dungeon. So you can actually set it to be, I want this to be a meteor storm with the, and then the rare item chance will be a brigadine. Usually the rare item chances are your low level items, and your common ones are your tarot cards, your spells, maybe a healing item as you get higher up in the areas. It can be Mage's Soul, Artisan Souls, that kind of thing. So by all means, just experiment with what the level gives you, because like I said, this is by all means not all you can do. It's just that this area has a limit. So I'm going to say Fire Tempest with a chance of a wristband, and we're going to know how to register it. Now when we go to the now it says trap chest. That's from an old. This still uses a slightly older translation, but risky treasures. You basically get the rare item. You just have the rare table, so you basically can. Okay, this one will give you the wristband. Done. So when someone opens that up, they'll get a wristband. So you can put some really nice things out there. There is a limit based on, again, the level, but you can be very generous with it, and it's something I should definitely encourage you to play with. When you start a new map, my recommendation is put down a chest, put down a risky treasure in the dungeon, find out what's available to you, plan around it. Again, with the editing these enemies is the same. As you can see, we have a little more of a selection available to us in the dungeon. As you know, when playing the game, as you go down further in a dungeon, the enemy shows up changes. So you have the opportunity of mixing it up as you go. So I would check to see what enemies are available on each dungeon when you're planning one out, like if you're doing a story type dungeon, or if you have a specific goal in mind, and make sure that the enemies align with it all the way down the dungeon. So okay, so that's the very, very, very basics of creating your own dungeon. I'm gonna go ahead and change it up, because there is one type of dungeon and one type of field that is unique. So I'm going to go back to the word list, and I'm going to go ahead and change this to be a woods type. Now, a forest field is more like a dungeon than it is a field. So you treat it more like a dungeon. So here. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this to. We'll make sure. That's where the priority can come in handy, is if you want something very specific. Now, I do not recommend 999 words often, because they'll dominate whatever. They'll dominate everything, and if everything's 999, it's the same as everything being 0. So keep that in mind. So we'll create a new map, and it'll be vaguely best over Aquafield. Sure, why not? All right. So now a forest field is a dungeon in its own right. It is treated exactly like a dungeon. You can deploy your own virus core on the field and in the dungeon. You can make rooms like a dungeon. It is a dungeon. So if you're looking for a field that is going to be nothing but a dungeon, I recommend the forest fields. They are some of my favorite. I like the aesthetic of it. It's got a forest maze look if you've never seen them before. And you have the opportunity of building an incredibly long dungeon or a unique set of scenarios. You can put messages in each one of these things. It just like with any other dungeon, you can create your own story build up before you get to the dungeon. There's a lot you can do. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit this one gimmick, because it'll give me the opportunity, because this is a blank room. Again, when you have a room, sometimes it'll come with objects. Some of those objects cannot be removed. So make sure when you're looking at the objects in the tray down here, you're looking for one. You find one that has the objects you want, or is a blank enough slate that you can work with. So one of the nice or not nice things about dungeons is you can have back-to-back portals right in front of entranceways, which I don't recommend because it's not a very nice thing to do, but you have that flexibility. On average, you have between 2 and 4 gimmicks and 2 portals. You will rarely, if ever, find a room that'll let you put more than 2 portals in it. But I've not tried every single room. There are a lot of rooms in the object set, so feel free to play around with it. Now you can actually put a golden egg out in these fields too, because it's technically a dungeon. But most people want the piney apple because it's very hard to get. You can put out breakable boxes, crates, symbols. You can't put out the warriors, but still a lot of flexibility you have available to you. Alright, so we'll just say we're done. We're going to hit save. And it's going to ask you, are you sure? And when you see this, you know you're good. So now you have a server. You have some words set up. You have a custom area or two. You're ready to show everybody. First thing you need to do is you need to exit out of this little part of the server. And then we want to go to the area server. Now this is where it's live. The version on the NetSlum server that you downloaded is set to connect to the NetSlum lobby server, so there's not much you can do as long as you have your forwarding and network set up correctly. You should have no problems being able to connect to it. So if we go ahead and go to, you have two options available to you when it's not live: publish and exit. Exit just closes this little application, of course, and publish, and then it'll give you this little list of the area servers that you have saved. Again, you can have more than multiples. You can have multiple saves. You can. Most people just have one, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's how I do it. I create different saves for each server that I do, so I can run them differently. Keep in mind that when you cannot double run an area because there's an identification number that's attached to it when you create it. So you do have to create a new one if you wish to run more than one server. You can't just copy an existing server, change the name, and won't interfere. So just keep that in mind as well. These are grayed out. They're still grayed out. There hasn't been any. The research hasn't figured out how to turn these on. But in the old days, back when this was live on CyberConnect's side, you would have been able to assign a password to a server based upon, I think it was if you're in a guild. That's unclear. But these will probably always be grayed out. So just don't. Unfortunately, I would just ignore them. So we're going to go ahead and hit publish. Now keep in mind again, red means it's the highlighted one. All right. And that's it. The server is live now. This will give when it's live. It'll say published. It'll give you the name, the level of the server, how many people are on it. These three slots here will show the name of the player, their HP, current HP / max HP. And the same with the SP. So you can kind of see what's going on. When there's a player in there, you'll see a little arrow, just like on the maps in-game. When you go to a field, you'll have that same kind of aesthetic, the gray background, heat map kind of look on a field, and the same map dungeon style. Now, since there's no players connected, there's not much you can do. But when there's a player connected, this is actually a button, not a menu. You can click this, and a dialog will pop up, and you can actually go ahead and send messages to them. Say, hey, thanks for being on my server. And that's basically all that's all that's there. Viewpoint is an interesting thing, which I won't cover in this video. That's almost separate thing on its own. But the gist is, you know that when you boot up Frägment, you have the three options. You have offline, online, area server. When you go down to area server and you put the IP address for your area server or the computer that is running the area server, it will actually it'll let you connect to it, and then when you do, this viewport thing will activate. And when the viewpoint thing activates, it'll let you basically it's to confirm that that's you. That you're the person that has the area server, and then you can view the players that are playing even if it's full. You can view all three and just switch. You can use the D-pad to change which player you're following, and it's good to see. You can see how people are doing your custom dungeons and everything like that. So it's very, very useful, very something that's not really just talked about or used much. And I've used it once or twice. It's very cool. Okay, so server's up. You're done for the day. I don't want to. I need to restart the computer. Whatever. You have two options. You can do shut down server, and then exit will also shut it down for you, but we'll do it the proper way. Shut down. And it'll go, are you sure you want to exit? Yes. And it'll tell the lobby server that it's done. If you have any players on there, it'll ask you for a message to send them, I believe. It's been a while. I might be a little bit off at that, but it will warn you that there are players and that they will be disconnected. It is kind of rude to do that if you don't, but they won't lose any items. What they will lose is any progress they made, potentially. Any progress they made while they were in your server. And then we hit exit. And it'll say the exact same message. Alright, so there's one other topic I wanted to cover. This is an optional topic, so you can feel free to click off the video at this point. But when you're in this mode, if you noticed, like I said before, it said, hey, you're trying to do something with the network. Should I add it to the firewall? Here's the reason why. When this is active, if you do the same thing with the area server option on your on your game, your frägment client, whatever you want to call it, and you connect to the server while you're in this mode, you can actually preview the custom maps you're making. Now, I have not done this yet myself, and that's why I'm only adding this as an addendum. But it is something that it is capable of doing, and it's something that most people have forgotten. And it's a good thing to keep in mind if you're making a very elaborate dungeon, because if you're testing it in that environment, there should be no item penalties, no level penalties, none of that. So, alrighty, so hopefully this video has been. I know it's just been me talking the whole time, but I figured it was easier for me just to kind of ad hoc this, and I apologize if this is a turnoff for anybody. But I wanted to cover this topic. This is an important topic to me because I feel that one of the most unique aspects of .hack frägment is the area server and the ability to create your own. Just, while it is a limited sandbox, a lot of fun things come from limited sandboxes. So I want to encourage you to just open it up, play with it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. You don't ever have to create a custom map. You can just make some keywords that you think sound funny, and just go with it. There's a lot of functionality in this guy, and I'm also not covering any. There's some other things. I figure that there's some other things you can do with it, but for the purposes of this video, I'm only covering what you can do with the client itself. I leave it up to you guys to figure the rest out on that one. So one of the things that people always ask is, can you get infected dungeons inside the area server for frägment? And the answer is yes. Unfortunately, it's not something you can control. It is a game mechanic of the area server where it will randomly decide that to corrupt your dungeon. If you start creating maps, custom dungeons, that's when the opportunity will present itself, because it will roll each time. Now, we're not sure about how it works in terms of having a higher level is better or not, but my server, Shining Darkness, which I have a backup, I pulled from a backup when it had its area server infection, and I'm going to show it to you right now. It actually was level 12 at the time, so anyone is up. It has the opportunity to do it, but there might be a chance that as your server gets higher in level, it has a greater chance. Now, what'll happen is, and what happened to me when it happened to Shining Darkness is, you'll work on the map. You'll go to File, and then you'll hit Save, and it'll say Area Corrupted, or something to that effect. I forget the exact wordings, but you'll know when you see it. And then you'll start seeing this Protect label on it, and you can no longer do anything to this map. It is locked in place. And then you have to basically, in order to unlock this, you have to complete the event, the infection event. It's basically considered an event. The basics is that you will not be able to do anything. You'll not be able to see anything. There will be changes to the map. Any scene messages you have will not play, and it's basically it's a fun experience, and I hope everybody gets the opportunity to try it out. In the link below, I will include a video of this actual run that Agog, myself, and Spooky did back in December, and you can go ahead and see what this actually looks like in practice. There is also one thing I want to touch on before I close out the video. It is a program from 2005. It has a couple of weird quirks when you're actually running it on your main system. The right click button can sometimes be hijacked by it, and you have to right click a couple hundred times, or left right click a couple times, everything. So be aware of that when you're running it. I recommend running your area servers on a second machine or a virtual machine or something that is not going to get in your way, but that's fine. It still won't hurt to run it on your main machine. But I do recommend running it, and you can run it on Linux. There's a guide on the forums from Bison that shows you how to use a couple of utilities for Linux to set it up so that VYEN can actually run on a server, and you can actually use the console, the graphical console, remotely. Alrighty, if there's any questions, I would suggest you hit us up on Discord. I'll be happy to answer some questions there. Leave us a comment, whatever. And again, thank you for stopping by and listening to my very informal rambling type video on the area server and what it can do for you. Alrighty, and I will see you again on the next video.